Welcome to Forever Exiled. I'm Justin A.K. Tags.
I'm Tyler, Wrecker of Days.
Episode 254, and we are joined by the one and only ZiggyD. Ziggy, thanks for hanging out with us.
G'day, mates. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy a bit of podcasting action. Love talking about
nice and early.
my fixations, info dumping people, and
Right.
all the better when they are actually interested in the topics.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just real quick, big shout out to our patrons. Thanks everybody who resubbed up. Anybody who signed up will shout out next week, and Patreon gets you access to After Dark podcast after the podcast. And we're back. Anyway, it's really cool. We've been really excited to chat with you. So thank you for making some time on a early Saturday in Australia.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. My toddler just woke up, so I won't apologize for any happy toddler noises that happen in the background.
We hear all the time.
Because they're delightful.
Our kids are allowed to interrupt us anytime they want.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Yeah,
Whatever
we're
needs to be.
family friendly. Well, maybe not always language wise, but we're family friendly in the sense that we have kids.
yeah, don't let them listen,
That's
but
right.
we like family.
Okay, so I have the first thing I just wanted to ask you about is just the name, the ZiggyD, but also the ZiggyD Starcraft, because
Yes.
you have them both. You've held on to the Starcraft in Twitter.
I mean, not by choice.
Can you change it? Or is that, I don't know how it works.
I think you can, but like that sort of thing always kind of does my head in. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go change
gonna do
everything that
something?
links to it, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I started during the time of it being popular to append StarCraft to whatever you were doing if you were in the StarCraft community, which is where I have my roots. And so it was always, force StarCraft strategy and whatnot. So it was ZiggyD StarCraft. And it's still technically on some of my handles, like my Twitter handle and stuff. But for the most part now, it rarely shows up. And I think most people just search on Google these days anyway. So
Yeah.
ZiggyD
I just happened to notice that it was a Starcraft, which led me into other things that I researched. But the Ziggy, that's actually your middle name?
Yes, that is my middle
That's
name.
the coolest middle name.
Yeah.
Is that a common name?
Yeah, it depends on where. It's kind of the shorthand of a few different things, like Sigmund or Siegfried or
Right.
a few different things like that. So it's, but yeah, it's my middle name was chosen by my dad, named after Bob Marley's child, I believe, Ziggy Marley. And he wanted it to be my first name, but Mum's like, no, let's do something more normal. So I
got
had Daniel, but joke's on her because I go by Ziggy these days anyway. Everyone calls me Ziggy.
That's awesome.
Even my mum at this point. So joke's on her.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you like Marley?
I can't say I've listened much more than the occasional song. Yeah. I listen to
awesome.
stuff that doesn't get me copy striked these days. Yeah, lots of indie music.
Right.
Oh, right. Yeah, you gotta be careful with that.
And your mom calls you Ziggy now anyway, hey?
That's it.
Oh, look at us. We're thermos buddies.
Good stuff.
So then the StarCraft, that's where you got started though. That's what got you into like the online stuff, like the
Yeah, I
doing
was
videos and-
at university at the time, and I probably as an avoidance tactic got super fixated on StarCraft 2. Just the like personal improvement, the challenging yourself, the learning the intricacies of it, that sort of stuff tickled my brain in a way that was very distracting from my coursework. So I needed an outlet for that. And my partner Amy suggested that I try, like writing about it. And so I started making a website and writing articles about it.
which
and things
you
like
still
that.
keep that website. Like it's still
Yeah, just for posterity. It's
Okay.
learningsc2.com.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh. And Amy's on there too. So you guys have been involved in that for
Yeah,
Since you started it then?
we've been working together the whole time. She's been my number one supporter
that's awesome.
through the early days when I made very, very little to no money, and
Yeah.
she was working to support us in the beginning.
Oh, that's so
while
cool.
I followed that passion. But she was the one who pushed me onto YouTube as well, because I was like, saw how much I was enjoying writing. And she's like, she had some friends who were doing YouTube, and they earned like $5 off a video or something. She's like, why don't you try this? I was like, I don't know, that doesn't really seem like me, but she was right again.
And when was that?
That was
YouTube days, the starting
in the
days?
lead up to Diablo 3. Diablo 3 was kind of just around the corner. And I made a couple StarCraft videos, and it's still so strange to me when someone's like, I found you through your StarCraft content. I'm like, what? I made like 3 videos or something. So I think they're still there. But yeah, really, it was kind of the launch of and just post launch of Diablo 3 where I started really making content, and then the swift kind of transition over to Path of Exile when its beta followed up at the perfect time to kind of capitalize on our dissatisfaction with D3 at the time.
That's really cool. I get my decades all mixed up, but you were on YouTube before YouTube was cool, right?
I don't know about that, but definitely the early days where it was easier to carve a niche. I had that advantage for sure. But
I can't think of
StarCraft
anything I
stuff,
was
or-
doing on YouTube at that time. So good for you.
it was the height of the Minecraft era.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, not that
that
has
dropped? I'm
gone
not
away.
sure.
Like
I was gonna say, yeah.
it's still a thing. But, yeah.
Did you stream back then?
I could not. Australian internet has been garbage and probably continues to be garbage in many ways. But I tried a stream sometime during the early Path of Exile era, and it was like a 120p, 10 FPS, unstable stream of a passive tree. And if I moved the passive tree around too quickly, it it went all blurry. People couldn't read the text. I had to read things out to people so they could read it. But I don't remember exactly like what it was like. But I remember that there was a lot of people who came over from YouTube. A lot of people were excited to talk to me live, and I really enjoyed that, because the thing that I loved about YouTube most of all was that positive feedback loop of putting a video out, reading the comments, interacting with the comments, like having a little conversation back and forth with people, and being able to do that live was like, my mind was blown. It gave me the perfect ego stroking, and also just like that that feeling of like, oh cool, I'm doing something and then people are enjoying it. I have value. Hooray.
I was scrolling through like your old videos, just going in order, and it was crazy when you hit you just did one where you talked about the PoE tree, and the numbers in comparison to the other ones surrounding it were like,
that might have been around the time of the stream
different.
then, because it might have been something about the big tree update. I really don't remember. I have terrible memory.
I don't remember what they all were, but whatever, maybe 15, 30,000. I don't remember if they were that high, but then it was like 180,000 compared to the other ones.
First
So
time
like,
I made it big. The first one I remember going
40 seconds.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the first one I remember being pretty big was a bit earlier in Diablo 3, where I made a video about the auction house, and Crip watched it on stream. There I was
nice.
in a beanie, looking really awkward and trying to explain economics of the auction house, of the room on the auction house. But he found it interesting, and his audience found it interesting, and that kind of got me a little bit of a start there. So thanks, Crip. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is really cool. So you've been playing PoE since day one?
Not quite day one. I tried to get into the closed beta and they wouldn't let me in, so I had to wait for the open beta.
Why? Wasn't it just paid?
No, at the time it was like a random invite or direct invitation.
Oh, I got mine from an invite. That's right. Yeah, there was a guy who was in it, and I got mine from that.
Yeah, the holy timer of suffering up on the thing, and every 5 minutes or something, I can't remember, like invite someone random from the list. I think it would show their name too, so you'd all be like, you bastard.
I'd never trade with them again.
People try and like log into their account, hack their passwords to steal their access. Yeah, no, I had to wait. I bought in with the Kiwi Pet supporter pack. I got a bronze Kiwi Pet. That's all I could afford at the time. Love that Kiwi.
And you flash the badge on your PoE profile?
I can't say I'm very good at updating my PoE profile. I have several thousand messages to still respond to, and I go back and respond to some of the oldest every so often.
Your inbox is like Justin's. Did you get an invite, or maybe you're not allowed to say, did you get an invite for the PoE 2 beta?
No, I had been talking to Jonathan about it, and I discussing the pros and cons of content creators playing it before we can kind of publicly record it and things like that. And there are some advantages to going in early on something like that, but like, for example, just kind of like building our knowledge base that we can better make guides in the future, even if we can't record now. And I kind of was torn on it myself. And I think he's not, I don't think they've brought in too many content creators at this point. The plan seems to be to do that like kind of right at the end of the closed beta, maybe, or at the open beta, obviously.
From a content creator's perspective, though, if that's the idea, does that, is there not a negative side to that you're losing time of stuff that you can't actually use? Like
Yeah, exactly. Like that's like the idea of being in the beta right now actually is a little stressful to me. I'd rather kind of focus on Path of Exile 1 and some of the PoE2 content I'm working on already from interviews when I was over there. And I'm kind of like relieved that they have a firm plan for this. And so I can just be like, oh, cool. I can put a thing on my calendar and say, okay, sometime around there, I'm going to make content. I can just focus on that then. I'm super excited. I really want to play more, trust me. But it's probably better for me that I don't have access right now, so it doesn't distract me from like my work,
Actually making stuff,
my life,
or accidentally say something, right?
Oh, I think I'm pretty good about that at this point.
Yeah, good.
I've been privy to things I shouldn't mention publicly for a good amount of time at this point.
Gotten kind of used to it.
Yeah.
How's now that you've had your taste of PoE2, and possibly it's still the November timeline that Trevor mentioned before, how's your interest level in PoE1 and interest level in making that content?
Prior to this league launch, I definitely felt like a diminished enthusiasm for Path of Exile 1 after playing PoE2 when I went around and played it there. But then I saw the new league, and then I have played the new league, and I kind of sighed in relief because I'm like, oh man, I'm still super into this. So I was really worried about that. But I loved Affliction. I played so much Affliction. I played for 2 months straight, which is way longer than I usually do for a league. Usually it's like, 3-4 weeks, so a month-ish, and then that's when I move on to, covering other games. But Affliction was just too good. I couldn't stop. And then I really wanted to have a similar experience with Necropolis, but got burnt out on the kind of the tediousness of managing things, trade, scarabs, the corpses, all that stuff. So that burnt me out on that, and I ended pretty quickly. But then this one rolled around, and I'm in love again. I'm in love with the Settlers again. So, Path of Exile 2, I'm very, very excited for it. I really, really want to play more, like uber craving after what I have played recently. But,
you went to the PC play one, right?
What's that?
You went and played at the PC one, like when they had the Path of Exile 2 play test or whatever?
They did 2 events in Los Angeles. I did the first one, and then they did a second one that was kind of like console couch co-op thing, which I couldn't make it to.
That's the one we went to, yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like the second one was way better experience. And then I went to New Zealand recently, and in the offices I played like a highly experimental current build that they were actively like pushing updates to or whatever. So it was less polished and more rugged, but it was phenomenal. It had some really interesting changes on it that I'm excited to talk about soon. Some stuff after Gamescom, maybe some just before. But I had a really good experience. I dove very deeply into Melee, which I really wanted to do. And even then I probably played like 8 or 9 hours, but still didn't feel like enough.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking forward to playing more.
Sorry, I had to step away. Was that for PoE2?
Yeah.
Yeah, you missed it all the teasers.
We had about 6 hours, was it, do you think, gameplay?
We played on the console.
He tried a lot of Melee, and I tried, what's it called, Minions?
Yeah, that build sounded like it was really well done. I did play a little bit of that build, and it seems like they struck a much better balance between like the early game character progression and some kind of like minimums of what they expect players to have access to at various points in the game. That's something myself, Jonathan, Mark talked about a bunch, was this idea of like kind of creating various things that will help players kind of keep up with what the game is asking of them, So if you're struggling and spending more time in the zone, various mechanics might occur that will help kind of catch you up a little bit. Or if you're blasting, then you won't need that stuff. So some pretty interesting designs they're doing to try and like smooth out the experience, because that first LA event, a lot of people didn't have a very good experience, especially less experienced players, some of the journalists and things like that getting very frustrated or not making it very far.
We talked to a few people that had been to the first one and were at the second one, and they said the same thing, that it was just
way better.
A better experience. We had a great experience. Like, it was super fun, and it was the first time I've ever tried PoE at all with a controller.
It plays really well on a controller. I did some...
that's what you played on, a controller?
I primarily played on mouse and keyboard when I was there at the offices, but we stayed with Jonathan, at his house, which is lovely. Our two families hanging out was gorgeous. But
oh, that's cool.
So thanks to him for that, because that was a really awesome experience. But we did some couch co-op on controllers in one evening, because I hadn't had a chance to play with that, and he wanted me to like get a feel for it. And we did a melee pair and blasted our way through. And just I remember remarking to him, I was like, this feels like really like leaps and bounds ahead of the kind of controller experience for Path of Exile 1. Like, it feels much more well thought out and adjusted and smooth. And there was like only like one or two little things with like maybe menuing or something that I was like, oh, this could be a little better. Oh, it was like flasks, I remember. I was like, hitting the different flasks while actively doing stuff was a bit tricky. And then he showed me that, oh, we're actually doing this. I don't know if we can do it. I think, okay, so there is a thing you can do with some controllers now. You can put extra like paddles on the back of them. That's like
the ones that we got was like freaking.
No, okay, yeah, they gave those out, so that's public info. Cool, all right.
Those are the elite controllers, though. Like those aren't
the elite controllers.
Those aren't standard controllers for typical console players.
Right. So they're like having elite controller support, so you can, if you want, bind flasks to like back paddles and things like that. And I was like, oh wow, that's really clever.
It is, and just the idea that you can.
Just the rebinding was awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Huge.
And that was actually a big thing for me too, is like I had a chance to, because the original LA build was option locked, like you couldn't go in and change your inputs. But I had a kind of unrestricted, could do whatever I want with the client there at the offices. So I was able to rebind things, and that really made a big deal, because I play with weird bindings in Path of Exile. So it was really good to be able to change that. And
what's an example of a weird binding?
My flasks are like ~QWS space, I think. I honestly can't even like remember because it's just pure muscle memory at this point. But yeah, it comes from StarCraft, where like we used like grid kind of clusters of hotkeys. So the idea of like you keeping your hand in one place only, and then kind of being able to reach everything with small movements, small rapid movements. So in the early days, I created a custom key binding setup for Path of Exile that involved kind of like the natural hand size and shape and stuff. I know. Yeah. That is weird. Don't worry about it. Weird bindings. But everything's kind of clustered on that little section of the left side of the keyboard.
Because then you'd be using skills too, right?
Yep. Huh. Yeah, my skills are on the number row mostly, but also like mixed around. Also in other places. I got like mouse side button, you know, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, things like that.
Huh. I'm just trying to play to see if I can figure it out.
So your overall
send
experience,
you my keybinds and you have a go with it.
Just get completely confused.
Your primary experience with Path of Exile, you enjoyed it? Like overall, you think it's headed in the right place? I mean, obviously you know much more than just playing it, because you stayed there and you spoke and you asked whatever generic questions, let alone interview questions. And so you've had a lot more dialogue than most people would. You're happy with the overall picture that you have with PoE 2?
Absolutely. And like, I really, really, really wanted to play more of it after I finished each time that I've played it so far. But so like big picture, yes, I'm very excited what they're doing with it. I had some specific things that I was like, I don't know if this is the right approach, or I don't know if this is making what they were trying to do better, but I'll see where you go with it. And the good news is that some of the decisions that they've made that I didn't think were working out, they're like, oh, well, we were changing that. Actually, we've already changed that. So some stuff that hasn't been announced yet.
Sure.
That was like firm things before. They're changing it. They're being highly experimental. We got that kind of feeling with Path of Exile 1 League this time, that like, yeah, we're just gonna throw in the currency exchange and see how it feels as an experiment, and we're gonna do this and this and this, and we're experimenting with this stuff. You know, we're changing stuff, being unafraid to change things in large ways, and then listening to feedback, testing it out, seeing how it works, and being unafraid to redo a bunch of work. One of the themes that came out of the discussions we had was the idea that like some of the changes they made had it so that they had to redesign every boss fight multiple times. And they did that. Like that's a lot of work and a hard thing to commit to. And they're embracing the feature creep to an extent, which, you know, is sometimes a negative when you've got games on a timeline or whatever, they keep getting pushed back, or people like back a game on Patreon and the feature creep makes it never happen or whatever. But I think feature creep is the right thing for them to be doing here, because they can explore so many more avenues and, you know, not be afraid of the fact that they might have to do a bunch of work to make a brilliant idea work. So yeah, especially even more excited now after my recent discussions with them and some of the changes and things they're experimenting with. I think they've got some really brilliant ideas that is going to reshape the genre in a pretty positive way, which they've done before with Path of Exile 1. You know, they have defined, you know, the meaty character builder genre with Path of Exile 1. And I think they're going to be doing that again, but this time with much better physical gameplay, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I struggled with 301.
The currency exchange, if that goes away, I'll cry.
I don't think that'll go away.
They can't take it away. I need Faustus.
It is very good now. It was hard to enjoy at the start when I first implemented it with the various UI, UX problems it had. But now
I think I used it right away.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have too much call to like in the first couple of days, but I tried like after a while, like selling a bunch of stuff on it, and I was like, this is actually awful.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like buying stuff on there was great early on, but actually selling things, so you wanted to go through and like find the random stuff in your stash and sell it. It was a massive pain to do so, but now it's way better. You can observe the spreads, you can figure out the ratios, you can find items in your stash. Yeah, that's much smoother now.
Oh, I didn't notice. I didn't know it was different in the beginning.
It was just kind of like a lot of missing user experience features initially, which they've polished up a lot. There's still a few little kinks I need to work out, but for the most part, it works really well now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed.
I kind of feel like GG is making the smart decision and going back to the feature creep in going with the feature creep and kind of being positive about, making all these changes, because it's not like they're making a new game. And as much as they want to say it, they're not really making a sequel. They're making a replacement game. You know what I mean? In many fans' eyes, maybe in GGG's minds it's not, but in many fans' eyes, PoE 2 is going to be replacing Path of Exile 1. And you kind of want to, there's a bit of that pressure maybe to fix some of the things that really can't be fixed or would be very dangerous to fix in Path of Exile 1s.
That's the whole reason for its existence, right? It is pure feature creep, the expansion, because originally it was just about making things like melee and stuff, being able to make that better, because they couldn't in Path of Exile 1 because of the limitations of like how the characters physically do things and whatnot. Yeah, the physical gameplay, right? That was the weakest part of Path of Exile 1 for the most part. It got smoothed out by the fact that we got really fast. I've talked about this before, this kind of concept of you can cover up various issues by making players fast. Like all the awkwardnesses of gameplay can kind of melt into the background and be harder to observe when your character moves and shoots and blows up everything really quickly, which evolved into a very fun state of gameplay that people really like, you know, map blasting in Path of Exile 1 now. But they never really were able to solve that kind of fundamental issue of like that core physical gameplay feeling really good, especially for melee. That's melee when you're slower and the game is slower really highlights just how awkward and clunky it can be. And, you know, they wanted to make that better. So that needed new rigging. So originally it was going to be a new campaign, new rigging, new aesthetics, and done. But then they feature creeped, like, what if we redesign the skill system? What if we redesign this? What if we completely redo all of these things and like make all these new classes? So they kept going, and now I do think now it is a completely separate and additional game, and not necessarily a replacement for Path of Exile 1. I do think more people will move to PoE 2 than think they will, because I do hear a lot of people being like, oh, I don't know if this is the game for me, because of various... They kind of see one particular thing or a couple things that they've seen or heard, you know, maybe about how certain things work, some of which might be changing. And they say, based on that, I don't know if this is the game for me. I think I prefer how Path of Exile 1 does it, which is absolutely fair, especially if you haven't played it yet. Like, it's easy to look at a particular change and be like, well, you know, just thinking about that in isolation, and especially putting in context of Path of Exile 1, which is the only context you have, being like, well, that doesn't sound actually like what I want. But I think more people will move to PoE2, but I don't think PoE1's going anywhere because it will be at this point very different. So it's hard to be a replacer for it, I think.
To me, despite the fact that they're different, they still scratch the same itch, I guess you could say. Like when I'm in the mood for something, I'll play one of them. But then if I'm burned out of one, I could see myself just not wanting to do the genre. I'll load up Age of Empires or something instead. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that.
In that regards, to me, it's a replacement because it's tough. I mean, that's just a personal thing. Like when I get tired of playing Elden Ring, I'm not loading up Dark Souls. I'm tired of From Software. You know what I mean? So to me, it's a replacement just because of the scratch that it itches. But I can see a lot of people that just the scratch that they want itched is more specific than just the genre, I guess you could say. Like it's like they really want to do this with their build, but only one of those games can accomplish that.
Yeah, sure. It's that's a specific player to player thing in the end, I guess. And there is a certain cannibalizing their own market share that they're going to undergo, right? Because of that, like there are, I think, a very large number of people who only want to like play an action RPG. They don't want to jump between all the action RPGs. And then there's obviously enthusiasts for the genre that will play all of them, like myself, but and may not really get tired of that particular section of the brain being tickled. But yeah, like for sure they will cannibalize some of their own market, but I think also they'll be taking bigger bites out of like people who bounced off Path of Exile 1 or never cared to try Path of Exile 1. I think will be actually trying PoE 2.
True.
I think it's going to be the biggest kind of players flooding to an indie game launch to try it out and talk about it that we've maybe seen in a very long time. Certainly rivaling what Blizzard maybe gets when they launch a Diablo title, but that's hard to approach, and that's saying something. Like that might not sound like a big deal, but that's saying something, I think, because that's where you get the disengaged gamer dads jumping onto Diablo because I haven't played a game in 10 years, but I bought a console so I could try Diablo 4 because I loved that game when I was younger. Yeah, you're not going to really get too much of those people trying out PoE 2, but I mean, they will get the same effect that they had with Diablo 3 again to an extent, where a bunch of Diablo 4 players who recently got back into gaming will maybe try PoE 2. But I think it's going to be a big one.
Yeah, I do too.
Are you comfortable saying any concerns? And everybody listening knows, Justin and I emphasize this a lot on our podcast as well, that we have yet to see what the big picture is about anything. Like criticisms that we have to any future content, whether it's Path of Exile 1 or Path of Exile 2, needs to be taken with a grain of salt because you have to play the big picture. And with Path of Exile, you need to play 2,000 hours of the big picture to actually see what the big picture is. But with that in mind, are you comfortable saying any of the hesitancies you might have towards Path of Exile 2? Not trying to trick you, of course. I don't want you to say something you're not supposed to say.
It's a question I should have thought about more before coming on the podcast, actually. Because a lot of the things that I like were specific little things. I tend to focus on the more zoomed in little details. And some of that stuff is the things I, specifically brought up with Jonathan Mark, and, multiple of them were changing ultimately how they work. So in a broader sense, if I have any major concerns for Path of Exile 2 is just that they might fumble that kind of initial launch opportunity a bit, in that it's so much changes all at once that it, that there will be too many issues at launch with those things, like that maybe some of them haven't been fully refined yet, or that some dramatic changes had occurred kind of over the course of the beta, and then they hadn't had a chance to settle in because they ultimately still have a timeline they want to deliver the game by. So it's more just like you mean
like hard launch, not beta launch?
Yeah, like actual launch. Like there is also an extent of concern about like how the beta affects that, if the game is feeling spoiled or a bit old news by the time it launches as well. So it can go either way. Like if they rush the beta too much, and then they launch with some stuff where like, well, it actually turns out that this feature we needed to redesign. It's like the way we were doing this mechanic is like we want to actually redo that. The game would be better if we do. But, you know, if they rush the beta, they won't have a chance to do that properly, and that will hurt the launch because, you know, I want I'm one of those gamers to check out PoE2 and come play this one and not bounce off them. Yeah. It's
you know, Justin and I were completely sick of PoE2. Like, it was just non-stop news about a game that we weren't going to be able to touch for over a year, and we were so tired of it until, like, it was just almost like, you know, you see so much Ryan Reynolds in commercials and YouTube videos that all of a sudden Deadpool comes out and you don't even want to see it because you're used to the humor. But I've heard it's a great movie. But my point is kind of like until we were invited to the playtest, we were so tired of it. We were so frustrated with just and this and this and this because things keep changing and changing and changing. So we can kind of understand now. Of course, we're like back on the hype train because we actually had our hands on it and we can see how much more there is that they're not really marketing. So it is still a very exciting experience for us. Let me bring up one thing because you were saying about thinking about the question ahead of time. What about one concern that I've had since I've come back, and our listeners are going to roll their eyes because I've talked about this way too much, but loot is still a very big concern for me. And maybe it doesn't need to be, but that's something that they haven't touched on at all. In any of their videos, they haven't talked about loot. And the problem for me with that is that they're a free-to-play model. And they've been a free-to-play model now for a decade. And that vanilla experience of loot is horrendous. That default filter you get is horrible. And that's not a great way to keep players. Right, to just overwhelm them with a whole bunch of garbage that they have no idea is garbage. And they're expanding their platforms. You know what I mean? Like, you can't expect this PC screen hopping, download this or whatever, you know, from Neversink to accommodate the filter experience. That's not what console playing is like. You sit down on your couch, the vanilla experience is what they either like or don't like, and then they never play it again. And because they haven't really touched on the issue in Path of Exile 1, and they haven't brought it up in Path of Exile 2, I'm concerned about it. But again, like I said before, I have no, like, we'll have to see what the picture's like. But because they haven't acknowledged, in my opinion, there's an issue in Path of Exile's 1 loot system. Because they haven't acknowledged that for the first game, it makes me think that they think it's totally fine for the second game. And so, did you find any issues with, I mean, 9 hours is 9 hours, right? So we're not, you know, judging or anything like that. You know, it's tough to get a grip, but with any of the conversations you're allowed to talk about, do you have hope for the default, or not the default, but the vanilla loot experience? Are you concerned about it? Where are your thoughts in that regard?
So you're kind of dancing around the thing that I was trying to think about that I am concerned about when you brought that up, which is the bounce off it kind of factor, like a player jumping into the game and then having like a big kind of thing that they have to get past that causes them to bounce off the game. And I do think like loot filtering is potentially one of those things. I don't think they've talked at all about loot filters specifically yet, or kind of what the end game gear dropping experience is going to look like yet. And I think ultimately they're just not there yet in terms of that stuff, like the actual what the late game is going to look like in that. I'm sure they have like an idea of what they're aiming for, but their gameplay testing at that point doesn't extend to that yet, right? Like, so you can't. This is something we did talk about, this idea that you like, if you have like several acts and then you have some kind of acts that don't have any content yet, or you have like a chunk of gameplay that doesn't have any actual content yet, it's really, Jonathan was saying, it was like it's really hard to get testers to push through that to kind of get into this like later levels. And even if you have like a mapping system, but there's like a gap of just kind of generic grinding that they have to do to breach between like Act 4 or whatever they're up to, and then that end game experience, it's really hard to get testers to push through that. So they're like working on that kind of currently as a big thing. It's like bridging that gap so that they can start to really explore that end game stuff. But yeah, I would like to see certainly better in both Path of Exile 1 and 2, certainly better default filter options, maybe a few strictnesses and something that they actively update would be really nice. It has to, by I think definition, be much less like hiding things, much less strict than what the community is going to use on average. Because I don't think like they can afford to hide things, and then players go, I was missing out on these items that are really important because you hid them in your default filter.
Yeah. Well, they have so many recipes that there's so little that they can hide from a default standpoint, right?
Yeah. And I think it's also, and this is something that they are doing, and this is what kind of gives me more hope on this topic specifically.
I'm excited. Go on.
Yes. Well, what they are doing is this idea that, like, if you're making filters that are literally the default filters made by the devs that are always, even at the least strict variant, hiding certain items, then those items probably don't need to be dropping in the first place, because obviously they serve no purpose. So they are, and that's what they are doing, right? Like, this Path of Exile 2 will be a reset in quantity of crap that is dropping to an extent. And it is a chance for them to also kind of like make it so that what is dropping does matter a lot more on average. And yeah, it's not there yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of that. And it's hard, like you said, it's pretty hard to evaluate from just a short time with the game. But that was something I was kind of wanting to pay attention to, was actually take a bit of time to like have a look at the items that were dropping and think about how my character was progressing and gearing and things like that. And I'm excited about some of the changes they are making in terms of making sure that you have tools to be able to get the items that you want if you need them, if you're struggling. Yeah. But yeah, I do think they need to do more with the filters. I'd love to see like an option for fine-tuning a filter in-game, a la Last Epoch. But it doesn't even need to be a lot, because you can still have the really hardcore filter creation be through Filterblade, an off-site thing. And I do think you probably can make those things work on console now. I don't think that's out of reach. But the console player on average isn't going to do that.
He makes them for console, and you can also make your own on their website.
Cool.
But they don't even provide you the default filter, which is something they do need to do if they are still going that route. But
yeah, but they do need
you can't
better default filtering, and that needs to be updated for sure.
Yeah.
You know, if like, unless they can solve it at a more fundamental, what's actually dropping level. But I don't think that's ever really possible, because players need different things, builds need different things, each character needs different things. So that's where the filter comes in. But hopefully the filter is only doing that, accounting for the differences between players and builds. Not everybody filters all of these things out. Hopefully they can solve that problem fundamentally.
Amen. When we played the first act at the play test or whatever, one of the comments that Tyler and I were talking about was the fact that when you play Path of Exile right now, you're going through the acts, and the loot just progressively gets more and more and more. And so the concern we had was like, okay, we're in Act 1 seeing this much. What does that mean we're seeing in Act 6 or the end maps? But the conversation was more around, what if this is just the amount of loot that just, you're not seeing more, you're just maybe seeing better. Because then it's not so worrisome with regards to what's the filter doing, because there's just less stuff dropping, but better stuff. Because after we saw Act 1, it was so fast that we were just already running over top of stuff and not picking it up. And so to just multiply that over, the next 6 acts and then maps, that was where we were like,
yeah, it's
back
not
in the same spot.
The recent builds are not balanced in terms of the progression right now. Like, it worked fairly well through Act 1, and then as soon as you got to Act 2, it's like characters power spiked a lot, and then like it kind of went back to Path of Exile 1 a little bit, because that's the base they're building off. So they know that's not there at the moment, which I hope they can really nail that down, because I saw just kind of a few of the little strands of what they're trying to do with like the earlier parts of the game, and where like rings felt really valuable, for example. Like getting a ring or getting a belt was kind of a big deal, especially getting a raw world one or a rare one was like such a big deal. And to the point where like you're in the crypts or something, a place that has boosted jewelry drop rates, and you're like, "Whoa, gonna get some jewelry while I'm in there." Yeah. There's a lot more things like that, which I'm looking forward to sharing down the line. But yeah, that sort of interesting kind of parts of the world
Ziggy,
having
that's
an impact
great
on your progression is very exciting.
Is that sort of like a little bit of a ruthless direction though, where it's like you're more excited for something? I don't know where I stand, but like when you talk about the excitement of a ring dropping or a belt dropping, that sounds to me more like the ruthless style.
Ruthless is obviously like extreme end of that idea, where like, let's drop literally nothing so that people are excited when they get something.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to go anywhere near that far.
Right.
But certainly that same concept applies to any gear-based game. Is you have to have some element of some
excitement,
scarcity, so that you can, be excited about things. But yeah, I was concerned that like that feeling that I had early on in the game was lost a bit too quickly as I moved into like Act 2 and my character really started blasting. And yes, I stopped caring about the stuff that was dropping. But if they can preserve that just a bit longer, even if it's mostly just kind of through the campaign into early end game, where you have that feeling of like, oh man, getting really excited about stuff.
It's sweet.
And the biggest concern with people when they talk about like Ruthless or this concept of like these sorts of scarcities is that they're going to have a bad time because of it. Which is like, oh man, I played through the entire campaign and I didn't get a belt, or like I didn't get a flask. I didn't find a life flask upgrade, or stupid stuff like that. But the good news is that those problems can be solved through systems that create like a minimum fallback safety net for that sort of stuff. Where it's like, okay, so if you're in the position where the RNG is such that you don't get a belt for multiple acts. Well, there is places you can go or things you can do that will give you a belt.
Buy them or whatever, yeah.
As long as it's not loot in the game. Like right now, one of those issues is, okay, I'm not going to get an upgrade to my life flask until the second act, but the solution is there's a flask recipe. So I'm supposed to be picking up a whole bunch of junk for a minor upgrade, whereas the easy solution is having enough comfortable currency to buy that life flask from the gem vendor. You know what I mean? The
and that is one of the already kind of existing fallbacks is the vendor's system. But you can do that in a much more interesting and engaging way where it's like, Flaskus, Lord of the Flasks, the side boss in this area. It's like, shit, that guy's probably got some flasks.
Sure, right. Yeah.
I hope there is somebody called Lord of the Flasks.
Yeah. Well, or indeed, you go pillage some graveyards for some jewelry because all the rich nobles buried there had a bunch of jewelry on.
That would be awesome.
I do appreciate you saying though that you don't think that they've even touched on it or it wasn't ready for the last two play tests because and if that's the case, like I really wish they said that. Like Justin was playing with some weapon types that didn't even have jewels that they could play with yet. And like there was some really weird,
so
but I wish they I wish they communicated that ahead of time to us because the majority of my feedback was based on loot. And what's like maybe I just wasted half my feedback because they hadn't even done anything, right? But then I go home, right? Like they invite us for a reason. They want us to talk about it on the podcast, maybe make some YouTube videos. If I don't know they haven't touched loot, I'm just crapping on them. And I had a fantastic experience.
I mean, it's not that they haven't touched it, and they have made a start, but it's like it only goes to a certain point in the game. At this point,
and it still needs to be fine-tuned.
It's a piece of the puzzle. Like you said, right now you can play one of those early builds and find like a really sick rare axe, but your skills you only have skills available for maces.
Yeah, that was exactly what we ran into,
and that means that your feedback naturally is going to be like. Kind of around the sense that like builds feel too locked in, but that's because it's only a part of the puzzle at the moment. Like in the future, and that's not going to be so much of a problem because you're going to have a lot more flexibility because all those things will actually exist in the game.
They'll actually be there. What did you play? You said you played melee. Can you say
it was skill that was already out? Yeah, I did a bunch of kind of sword and board style. I really wanted to mess with the shields, and
did you actually use block?
Yep, using the active block. And because I really wanted to.
That was it. That was a thing. That was in PoE 2.
Yep,
like you had to hit the button to block, as opposed to just being statistical.
Shield block.
Yeah, but I didn't play.
Very cool. Yeah. It's I think very cool. It is that in addition to your like base dodge roll, give you a lot of like tools for dealing with different scenarios. It's good, and that was one of the things that they did. Where it's like, we have to redesign all the bosses now. It's because like, okay, you have an active block that can block all the damage, so now we have to think about what skills can't be blocked, what skills can be blocked, and make sure the ones that can be blocked are well signaled, or can't be blocked are well signaled, I should say. So,
do you know how that mechanic is going to work? Like how it currently is? Who knows if they're going to change it? But like, is it 100%? Is it about is it a stat that's on the shield that gives you like 90% damage mitigation?
So there's a bunch of items in the game that grant a skill, and the skill on those shields that allows you to do this. So there's different types of shields. There's ones that are like parrying shields, which are, kind of more just around that like passive block, same as PoE 1. But then there's also the larger shields typically. So any sort of like big plank of metal that you can hold up has an active block that you can do, that you can bind to a key that you can.
And that was 100% block?
And bring it up. Yeah, and it's a 100% block, and anything directional, basically.
Physical, or does it matter?
Anything. Yeah, it has to kind of come from a specific direction, like so that you can block it. If it's something that bursts up from the ground, or like a damage over time or something like that, then you can't be blocked. And then certain boss abilities flash red and they can't be blocked. Like it's nice and obvious. Well signaled. So this is their big kahuna thing. There's no way I'm blocking this thing where they slam me with a mountain. So
did you stick with sword and board for most of it then when you were playing? Or?
Yeah, I did a playthrough of Act 1 on that, and then I got access to the newer build that was like internal testing build, and then I played a ton of monk, which I spent as much time as I could with, and that was eye-opening and thrilling.
Really? Did you have monk at the first PC?
I don't think so. No,
they had it for us. I tried it, but I couldn't get into it. It was just it has a much like more difficult time early on with like kind of getting it, understanding how it plays. Yep.
And I felt like I just started to touch on after a few hours that, oh man, if I use this skill, then this skill, or if I engage in this manner,
right,
I'm starting to look like an absolute badass.
I watched people's video footage and I was like, what the hell? I did not feel like that at all.
It always felt like there was more I could do when I was playing the monk. Like, I would like have a really good like engagement. I'd blast a pack or blast a boss, and I'd be like, oh man, but I think I can do even more. And I just started to scratch that surface. And I really wanted to play just a few more hours. I was like, Jonathan, can you install it on your computer at your house? Or we couldn't quite get enough time. I had to go get on my plane, sadly. Because I was just scratching that surface like, oh man, there's so much here. There's so much here to figure out. But yeah, monk was thrilling. And I also messed around with the weapon swapping system quite a bit too. I was like, I am here. I have more time to do this. I'm going to like mess with some of this stuff that people haven't really had a chance to mess with. So I found a Ice Nova gem and like a really good rare. No, I found a really good rare spellcaster staff as opposed to the quarter staves, which are the melee variants.
Yeah.
And I tossed it on my monk's back.
It's fine. You don't have to mute it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Almost all that stuff gets taken out. Magic.
Oh, wait.
What kind of dog?
Maltese Shih Tzu cross something?
No, something.
I think we're getting into real thing.
something.
Yeah, he was a rescue puppy.
How old?
Nice.
He's pretty old now. He's like 14 or 15, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you're giving a lot of extra love.
Yeah.
Paying a little bit more attention.
He's a good doggo. And Tully is adorable with him. She loves to like fill up his food bowl and give it to him and then like hand him individual biscuits.
Yeah,
making
right. How old is she?
One. She is approaching 2. She's like 1 year and 7 or 8 months old now.
Well, that's such
fun.
a phenomenal stage.
Yeah.
Take lots of pictures.
That's so good.
That's so great to go back. We have like my kids are 9 and 11 now, and I watch every single one. I don't know how you store your pictures, but I use Google Photos, and the memories that you get every day, it's just so great. But then it even includes like when you do your pets, it's like, oh, here's like Oliver and Riley together. Like
that stuff is really good now. But I love that like the phone cameras work so well now, and that you can like type a thing in and it just uses AI to search your photos for you.
It's so good. And so like just take those pictures, delete them later if you need to, but goodness me, it is so great to go back to, and I'm happy for you. You said her name's Holly?
I cherish that too. No, her name's Tully. It's based on Talina from Path of Exile.
Oh, cute. That's awesome.
Very nice. That's cool. They get along. Do you have
I'm going back a bit. I know we were like right into the PoE talk, so some of our listeners will be like, "No, don't let Justin talk."
Oh, I thought we were going to jump cut back to what I was saying.
I don't even remember. What were you saying?
I was okay. Let me pick up my train of thought.
Yeah, let's finish that off.
So
he was talking about how much he loves zombies.
Oh no, you're switching you had the weapon.
Yeah,
that's right, the weapon. Okay, I
don't
want to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I found an amazing rare spellcaster staff as opposed to the quarter staves that the monks use. And I chucked it on my back, and then the next like uncut gem that I got, I cut an Ice Nova gem. And the monk has quite a bit of like elemental infusion stuff going on. And one of their things is they can do a backflip where they fling ice at the enemies that build up freeze. So often you'll freeze little enemies, but on bosses, you'll build up a chunk of freeze towards, building that opportunity to actually properly freeze them. And Ice Nova is really good at that, has a massive boost to freezing. So I bound that skill to the rare spellcaster weapon, which was like plus gems and cast speed and some other stuff. It was like really good. And then I would basically move through a pack holding Ice Nova and then backflipping from my ice attack, which would automatically swap to my quarterstaff for the monk. And then I would, slam down the frozen enemies like a big lightning strike or something like that. Like this weaving together seamlessly of these different gameplay styles is
Did it feel
so
smooth?
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really good because it's fully automated. Like there's a slight delay intentionally added to swapping weapons so that even when I was playing sword and board, I had a big two-handed weapon that did a lot of damage. I dropped a good rare one or something. And then I had a not very good one-hander, didn't do a lot of damage, but I had a good shield. I would still have the shields up ability to block. And if I wanted to, if there was enough time, I could press the block ability and I would whip out my shield and block a big attack from a boss. And then press my front flip slam ability or whatever, and it would swap back to my two-handed weapon to punish them after that. And yeah, that was seamless. But, compared to if you just always have the shield out, there is a slightly longer delay before you do bring that block up. So you have to know the ability you're going to block and know that you have time to do it.
Yeah. It's all about the animation. That's really, I absolutely love that idea that there's no weapon swap button per se. It's just, this is the skill and you're going to get used to the animation time for when it's going to be ready. Spells seem to be almost instant, but there's the cast time, but not the swap too. But I just love that concept and it's such a great feel. How'd you feel about doing the tree? Did you use the tree and swap out a tiny bit of the points that you get?
You get the tree a little bit later. And I actually wanted to test, can you use this system before you get it? Because the idea is that you get the tree and then players will start messing with this fact that they can have different weapons and different skills and swap between them automatically. But I was like, I want to break the systems a little bit. I want to see what's possible. So I actually used it a bunch before that point, and it works, but you do have to consider more of what actually functions, because you can't quite manually dictate, use this for this weapon and this for this weapon. But the block ability only works with a shield, so it'll have to swap to the shield. And this other thing only works with this staff, so it will swap me back to my staff. So I was able to kind of work around the limitations there, which is fun.
That's why it's so hard to go back to PoE 1.
It is. It's
definitely was nervous about jumping into a melee league on a melee character after playing melee in PoE 2, because it is where the biggest changes will be felt, I think, in that melee experience. This especially league? Like what I said with Monk, kind of weaving together these different gameplay things. And I like to kind of be a little careful about mentioning things like this, because I think it can turn some players off. Sure. But the idea of Monk feeling much closer to an action fighting game, in the sense that you're weaving these different abilities together, and how you move and how you use those abilities and combinations of abilities is much deeper, much more interesting, and much more important. But I do think that can turn players off, because some people, want a more traditional RPG experience where it's less based on their personal skill and based on the character's skill. But that's fine though when
you've got 9 classes.
And you're gonna have a mixture you're gonna have a real big mixture, and I'm super interested. And I did talk to them about this a bit, but I'm really interested in seeing how they make sure that all these different melee archetypes feel different, because you have big two-hander. How does that feel different to a duelist who might be using a rapier or something like that? Or how does that feel different to the monk? And just comparing monk and the either two-handed melee or the one-handed and shield, and seeing how different they felt. So I was very excited for the potential of that. I really look forward to seeing what they do with the assassin or the various different archetypes like that.
Did you end up playing melee in this league then? in Settlers?
Yeah, I did. I was a bit nervous about it because of that fact. I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm going to be taking a bit of a step back. And certainly it is.
Sure.
Path of Exile Melee is far more one-dimensional. So, but it's, I actually really liked it way more than I expected. I'm playing Earthshatter, Warcries, Exert. And this was it was literally the thing that I thought I would like the least, but looking at it in the past. But I was like, man, this is so clunky. You got to press like 5 Warcries. But between the automations and actually the feeling of Earthshatter with the pop-pops is very satisfying. Using the new Calm's command helmet that blows everything up.
Earthshatter's hot. Just the sound.
It feels really good. Yeah. And I like that you can actually kind of have a slightly slower attack speed and it still feel pretty good. I do err on the side of the faster axes though. I don't really want to use one of the Kurui choppers or whatever they are. It's too slow, man. I prefer the fast one with the lower DPS, thanks. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. So there's so much fun to be had with Period 1 melee still, but it's smoothed out a lot by the fact that we're pretty fast.
Right.
Yeah. That's what helps save it a lot, is that, yes, I'm able to automate these Warcries. Yes, my character, I can get a decent amount of attack speed still.
I started with Earthquake, switched over to Ground Slam of whatever makes it bigger.
Girth
yeah,
Slam.
Something like that.
Another one.
Yeah, but it
I
is
never
fun.
remember the name.
It's so fun. No, I can't remember either. I don't know, whatever. Earthquake of bigness, it just makes it wider, but it was fun.
Yeah, I planned on using that. I bought one for a ridiculous amount early league. And then I used it for a while and I went back to Earthshatter, man. Earthshatter's too fun.
I started Earthquake, then I was like, no, I want to play Ground Slam. Tried it out and I was like, eesh, I don't like this at all. Went back to Earthquake. But then once my character was actually built up, he could attack a little bit faster. It felt good. Okay, now I'm going to take it back. What did you go to school for? Because you said you were in school when you started StarCraft.
Yeah, I went to university to do marketing and management.
Okay.
So business degree in those things. Which
did you finish that before you started doing this stuff?
I did get my degree, but it was a dual degree in marketing management, and I did it. I was one credit off, like literally just one class off getting the marketing aspect of that, like just to get it on the piece of paper. And that's when I did not care. I was like, give me the paper. I threw it in my closet, and I was good. I was done.
You were already into the YouTube stuff at that point?
Yeah, that was maybe like a year into the YouTubing stuff. So
And it was that successful that it was worth throwing the paper in the closet?
Not really. Like, we definitely had a few years of me not really earning a lot of money. I was like doing freelance writing on the side, writing for basically doing what AIs do now. Writing, generic SEO articles about garage door openers and things for small amounts of money, and just to try and pay bills for a while I worked on YouTube videos. But I saw the scaling potential of it. That was the thing. Not a pretty analytical mindset to it at that point because I really wanted to do it. So I was like, yeah, okay, if I make this video and it makes $15, what if I make 10 of them?
Right.
And what if I keep earning $1 a month from then on? Surely that will do something.
Right. Eventually it'll add up. Did you always decide because you do vary like you vary your games. You're not like just PoE. You're obviously very heavy into PoE as the league comes out, but then you switch it up, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, like people who get into the YouTube and the Twitch and stuff, to be able to change up your game and stuff. Was that just a conscious decision when you were doing it, or like?
I think it happened a bit over time, but I did want to establish early that like I would play other games. Don't freak out. People still freak out sometimes, but mostly it's people who aren't my viewers now that freak out. My viewers are very used to it. And at this point, a lot of them even like prefer or get really excited about some of the other content I do. They love when I do a RimWorld playthrough or a run on Star Sector or something like that.
Do you just do that based on
RPG?
Feel? You're just like, nah, I'm into this. I'm going to try this one.
Yeah, I mean, Path of Exile lends itself perfectly. I feel like more PoE streamers and stuff should do this because it's got the 3-4 month cycle. You do 2 months of PoE and then you do other games for a couple months. And at that point, it kind of works naturally. Like, even if you're just looking at the financials of it, you get 80% of your earnings in the first month. And then, you can go and do some other stuff in the meantime. So like, yeah, maybe it doesn't quite work for everyone's what they need to earn, and they drop off too hard or whatever. So everyone has to consider for themselves what works for them. But I yeah, I love indie gaming in general. I love loot-driven games, and I love kind of like playing a game where I get to tell a bit of a story. So whether that's like the story of a build I'm creating in Path of Exile, or it's the story of my colony in RimWorld. I love sharing that and building that with my community, because like it's always my viewers that are like helping shape that through their like suggestions or inputs or whatever, you know. Someone has like a creative idea and that becomes part of the story of, you know, it becomes an item I wear or it becomes a thing I do in the game. I love that. So yeah.
Do you oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
Oh yeah, I embrace the variety. I am but yeah, my bread and butter is understanding a complicated thing in a game that people really want to play and enjoy more but are struggling with, and then trying to explain it in a way that makes sense for them. Right. That's my skill. That's my primary skill. Taking something that's a bit overcomplicated and making it easily digestible. So that's where I try to focus. But I can take that to any game, right? Like,
have you offered your services since you used to write about garage door openers and stuff? Have you offered your services to write or improve the help section of Path of Exile for them? Not for free. Never for free.
I haven't thought to do that specifically. It's a good idea, actually.
Hey, you're guaranteed a small step in your income every 3 or 4 months. What?
They have some really good people on staff for that stuff now. Yeah, so they could probably do it, but yeah, whether they find enough people actually like do that stuff. Well, I don't know if this has been shown, but PoE2 is getting much better in that regard.
We even noticed it when we played too.
Okay, yeah. What did you notice? Tell me.
Just the ability to mouse over, or not mouse over, but whatever, go over specific terms
it's hover,
and skill.
Justin,
and hover.
in controller
yeah,
land.
I don't know
it's
how
hover.
it works.
Okay,
Sorry,
he's a PC snob, and I'm a console guy. So he's way up here. I'm way down here.
Learning how the controller works in that game. Yeah.
Hover, Justin, hover.
Okay.
Nested information, right? Like,
yes,
I'm a big fan
and
of that.
You can follow it along, which was awesome.
And because you can go down a wiki train, like just keep going and going and going. Yeah, it was awesome.
So I literally try 5 to 10 new games a month pretty often, especially because like at the end of the month I do indie tryouts where I do like 5 or 6 games in one day. And so I'm always constantly learning new games, and I love when I play a new game and it has like nested information. So that's where a box appears when you mouse over something, and then it has a keyword in it and you mouse over that. And then that opens up an info box and that has a keyword and you mouse over that and you follow it down. It tickles my brain.
Yep,
you can say dirty things. That's fine.
We're the same way.
See, yeah. What's it called when you, obviously not masturbating, but the same thing about a build when you're character creating? What's the term again?
Excuse me,
like
what?
in fantasy sports. I don't know if you're into any fantasy sports, but you call it roster baiting when you like get together with your buddies and you're talking about your rosters. I forget what the term was. We talked about it a bit ago about
me and you.
Well, no, you don't listen to anything I say, but it was us and other people that are way cooler than you. Not you, Ziggy, Justin. You're way cooler than Justin. But anyway, it was there's a term, but you could be gross.
Let me just note this so I take it away.
Oh, okay. Well, all I was going to say is that it like tickles my ADHD brain. That's it.
See, I don't know about what you're talking about. No, I already went below the belt.
Yeah. But no, it's such a good tool for, because like it follows the natural path of how we learn. We learn about a thing, and then something within that we are interested in, so we learn about that. So this is like the number one. Any game that has any kind of depth or complexity to it should do this. The indie devs, please listen, because I am super psyched when I play that. I think it was like Mega Loot recently that I played, which was like a game that had almost zero gameplay, but it had lots of character customization. It was really, really good. And it had that, and I'm like, you guys are amazing. This is so good. This is such an early build of the game. Awesome. And this was a priority for you, I can tell. So they're doing that with Path of Exile. It was pretty good in
PoE2. Like when we played it was miles ahead of PoE1, just to be able to read that.
And Jonathan specifically mentioned that as like a thing that they're trying to really do. So that kind of means that when you do that well enough, you barely even need a help. Like, if you're playing like Civilization or whatever, if you just use nested Dropbox stuff to explain things in context as they're happening, then no one ever really needs to open up that super dense help screen wiki thing in game. It's good to have it for the few people that do, but you almost don't really need to if it's done well enough. And I think maybe they found
For
that with
most
Path of Exile
things.
1, that like that help menu has barely any people probably use it, I'd say. Just because learning that way that's like learning from a textbook, man. It's like reading a textbook cover to cover to learn something. It's not really.
I think it is needed for
helpful.
mechanics, like game mechanics. Like if you want to know how to progress certain, like what's delve, what's Jun, what's this, like all this stuff all of a sudden gets thrown at you, and sure they've changed it, but then what is this board that they have, and what are the?
I mean, you can have
what
that
do you
on
do?
the screen relevant to that though, like on the delve screen, you can have a thing for that. You can have that stuff be contextual, but then the bigger kind of picture, you can have a page for it that you can click on, the little I button or whatever.
Well, I'm glad that you have a direct line to our favorite company, because your tickles and my tickles are very much in line, and so it's
Much better word, Ty.
I'm glad. Well, no, it's nice though. It's nice because I share a lot of the same same hopes that you do for the sequel coming out, and so it's nice to hear that. I can write as many articles as I want and feedback and post it on pathofexile.com. Who knows who's going to hear it? So it's nice to hear that you have your say. I was going to ask you, do you prefer 3 months or 4 months for Path of Exile schedules?
I probably have 4, honestly, at this point, especially in the future where they might be doing alternating between PoE 1 and PoE 2. But they've said it well before. Like, if they do 3 leagues instead of 4 leagues, then they're making 25% less money or 33% less money or whatever. Like it doesn't make fiscal sense at a certain point to do that. Unless what you're gaining through that delay is significant enough. But maybe with Path of Exile 1 leagues alternating with PoE 2 leagues, then maybe that will make more sense. We'll see. I think currently their plans probably are to still stick with 4 a year. It's just been impossible for them to do so whilst also developing PoE 2 at the same time, like doing so much bulk of content. Like once the game's out, it's not like they're going to stop development on either game, but the bulk of the like really crazy amount of work they have to do to build a game initially, like build an entire campaign, that will be behind them at least. So they can, spend X amount of time just making whatever expansion or league or mechanic specifically they're making. So maybe it will be more possible for them to do. But yeah, I prefer 4.
Do you think they'd ever consider one of them on a 3-month cycle and one of them on a 4-month cycle, and so they'll match up once a year?
Sounds awkward. you get them like going out of sequence and then in sequence with each other. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure
When you
it will
say
be
4, do you mean 4 leagues or 4 months between?
4 a year. So I prefer 4 months.
So a 3
cycles,
month.
so 3 a year. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, that is confusing.
Wait, what? Hold on. How many leagues?
I like 3 leagues a year that last 4 months because it gives me more time to dive into it and then more time to in between to do other games.
Other things. Sure.
Or in the future, play Path of Exile 1 and 2. But yeah, if they're too close together in the future, I can see me not ending up getting to each PoE 1 league, for example.
Right, because you've gotten too much into it.
Yeah.
I like the 4-month league cycle just because their history of the 4-month league cycles have actually gone really well.
Yeah.
And we've been on them for like 2 years roughly. And most of the leagues have come out really strong.
Yeah, this one was
quality-wise,
pretty good.
Whether people like them or not is a different story, but that's always a personal aspect. But quality-wise, they've been much more consistent.
Yeah, and at a certain point, more time doesn't help. A league mechanic people don't like. Get better.
Yeah, that's true.
So while we're on the subject, I have never been to Australia, right?
That's where I am. Correct.
Do you have a lawn?
That's a good question.
Kind of.
We had Jimmy on a few weeks ago, and he lives in an area where you're not allowed lawns because in Vegas you just can't have lawns, I guess.
All right. Yeah,
that surprised us because we like our lawns. We're bad at our lawns, but we like our lawns. Do you have a lawn?
I like this idea of like the manicured lawn thing. No. I have natural grasses and clovers and other things that grow in the clayish soil on my property, amongst other things. I'm more interested in planting trees and bushes and things to try and regenerate this land around here, revegetating to get more small birds. We have an amazing wildlife in this area, but the property on which we built our house is and was all this stuff was just like horse pastures, which just create no space for birds to live. So they've just kind of like died out over time. But
so you've started putting your own, like planting your own stuff?
Yeah, we're putting more and more stuff in as we can, planting more and more trees and doing like more like native dry kind of garden beds and things like that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm big into gardening as well. What have you planted recently?
My partner just got a bunch of tube stock for some small trees and things like that, which I'm blanking on the names of. But well, what do we got? Like, we did some pincushion hagias and stuff, which didn't survive, but we'll try again.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's a challenge. Yeah.
Is it what's time of year there? Are you like summer, winter?
Cold currently.
Oh. Is this winter, fall? What are you in?
I guess it's winter. I don't know, dude. I don't
keep track. I don't know. Do you guys not have seasons?
Play games, man. I just play games. I don't know what season it is. What's August? I guess, is it technically getting close to spring? I guess it's probably still.
You
winter.
guys don't get snow, do you?
Not really. No, you have to kind of go to a mountain for that. It gets pretty cold though. We had a lot of -5 Celsiuses and stuff recently.
Oh, thank God, Celsius. Thank you.
That's right, Commonwealth, buddy. We're in Canada. Okay, you said cold.
By my standards.
What's the expect?
-5 is pretty cold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said it was -5 or it's expected to be
Yeah, we had some like
-5?
-5 nights and stuff like that, like below zeros.
All right, you're allowed to say it's cold then. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
-5 is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to pour a bucket of hot water over my car for the first time possibly ever.
Those are good times. Do you have any cars there that plug in? Like they have little electrical cords that...
No, Ty, you're thinking like we have cars out here like in Alberta and stuff, because the temperature gets so cold that they actually have to plug into the house just to start them, because it helps
not
warm the
EV,
engine.
not EV.
Yeah, not
We're
EV.
talking like
okay.
1980s vehicles.
Yeah. I'm not used to these things.
Oh, that's cool.
We'll see as
Sweet cold
temperatures
Canada
change over time. What happens?
Good for you, Winter. Hey, pets. You mentioned you have your little
we have a
Maltese
little
something?
rescue puppy. Yeah.
And getting on in years. Do you have any other pets?
No, just the puppy at the moment, and him and Tully are enough for us at the moment.
Of course.
Yeah.
Bit of a sad question, but it's different for everybody. Will you always have a dog?
Probably not for a while after this one. We might see when like Tully's older if we want to get some other pets, maybe. But I've had dogs all of my life, and I'm ready for a
So
break.
it's more
from
about the break from dogs as opposed to...
Yeah, I love them. They are amazing, and I've had so many dogs. My parents did dog showing and dog breeding and stuff when I was a kid, so I've had so many dogs.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think we'll let a natural break occur in that, because I've always had a dog, so we'll see how that feels for a while, maybe.
What about you mentioned that you don't even know what time of year it is. What do you do when you're not gaming? What do you like? You drink lots? Do you read lots? Do you do push-ups? Do you just play more games?
Or whatever my brain tells me to do. I sometimes refer to myself and Amy as being hobby collectors, and not that we like collect things as a hobby, but we collect hobbies.
Sure.
So the classic cycle, which I'm sure other people with a similarly spicy brain to myself will be familiar with, the concept of the cycle of get super interested in a potential hobby, read everything about it, research it, purchase the most expensive things for it that you probably shouldn't buy before realizing that, before actually engaging with it, engage with it, have a lot of fun with it, and then slowly kind of gain interest in something else, and the cycle continues.
That's funny.
I've learned to just kind of embrace that and come back to things as I go. But as for the not knowing what's going on outside thing, I live in my brain a bit, so I don't know what day of the week it is and what the season is and stuff a lot of the time. Thankfully, Amy's very practical and very good at organizing things, so we work well together. So she does a lot of that, and I do a lot of the getting absorbed in my brain and
look at this thing
turning that into work.
What's the most recent hobby?
I've been getting back into art and drawing, which I always liked but never practiced enough and never really got enough into. But that's been on pause a little bit since the new Pee Wee League. Bit of writing. Yeah.
Do you still do writing?
Yeah.
Yep. For anything or just for fun?
Just for fun lately, yeah. Like, I don't want to write about garage door openers anymore, but yeah, just writing for fun. I'd love
Justin could have used you the other week.
Yeah, that's right.
I like writing in a bunch of different senses. Like, it's something that I do in my job, but it's also something I can do to enjoy too. So, like, there's writing for, like, making a video is writing. Whether you write a script down or not, you are still kind of like writing in a sense. But sometimes it's like writing things for like a D&D campaign, or, you know, working on a book that you may or may not ever do a thing with.
Do you play D&D?
Not as much as I'd like, but it is another one of those hobbies that I get super into from time to time.
Got all the books. And
I've got like a billion projects on the back burner that one day I may or may not circle back to and finish. Like, for example, like a D&D thing that I do on stream where my viewers play a character together. Like a Twitch
cool.
plays Dungeons and Dragons, where they all control a character together.
That's
like
fun.
I go back to working on that every so often, and maybe one day that'll occur.
Have you ever tried it? Or is this just something you're working on?
I haven't done a live stream of it yet, but you know, I've created some of the tools for it, or had an expert create some of the tools for it. And
oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's
so
fun.
one day I'll get back to that.
Have you ever gotten into fish tanks?
No, not fish. That sounds like an expensive hobby too.
It is a money hole, and you're welcome if you get into it, but I loved it. That was one of my favorite hobbies that I'm not allowed to have anymore. The boss slammed her foot down and said, nuh-uh.
It's probably smart.
Archery. We went pretty hard on archery for a while. My partner especially loves archery. We'll probably get back into that a bit later. And LARPing. I did some LARPing for a while. I quite like that. I'd love to get to it. Like, we just went to kind of like the weekly ones, but I'd love to actually go to one of the weekend events or something like that. Like one of the
Is that a pretty common thing out there?
I mean, there's LARPs pretty much anywhere you are. There'll be one sort of near you. It's just like you don't tend to see them because, you know, unless you're looking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they like hire out, you know, some place out the bush, or they hire out a vineyard and do things there, or, you know, they're at the sports park sometimes after dark having a battle. It's good fun. I I want to do stuff for fitness, but I hate just going to the gym. So something like LARPing is really fun because, you know, you're physically active.
You get out there.
It's because you're engaged in what you're doing. It's not really work, you know?
Yeah.
I like that.
That's right.
Do you stream all days of the week?
Pretty much. Lately, I've been a bit more consistent about taking some set days off that I spend with the family.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have set days and hours that you try to do it, or how do you?
I typically stream like midday till afternoon, midday to 6 p.m. Australian, but I'll probably try and evolve things as I go. I'm pretty inconsistent, or I'm much more consistent these days than I have been in the past, but yeah, I've never really taken to that age-old, very accurate advice of like having a consistent schedule for content creation. It's a very good idea, and I probably would be more successful if I did, but that is not how I work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome that you've made it successful your way that works for you in your life, so that you're actually enjoying it for what it is, as opposed to it being much more of a job and a task and a duty.
Yes, my audience is very understanding, and I am endlessly appreciative of that. They're always very supportive when I need to take a unplanned day off, or if if I'm late or whatever. They just kind of meme about it, tease me a little bit.
But you know what? I'm sure now that you've been a parent for a bit, you've really taken, I guess, an appreciation for the success that you've been able to have, or continued success, because now you can still have that varied opportunity to your schedule, and it's not cutting into your newfound priorities, right?
Yeah, it's super good. And I really appreciate working from home and everything too, and that I can dictate my own schedule, because I can go do a thing with Tully, or I can see her on my hourly breaks that I take. It's awesome.
That's sweet. I have to ask you, because somebody will get mad at me if I don't. Do you eat tacos? That's the first part of it.
I love tacos.
All right. Can you walk me through? Tyler doesn't get to talk. Just build a taco. Walk us through building.
Well, that depends. There's many ways to build a taco.
Well, how would you just give me your average standard? What's your normal taco?
Justin's meat and potatoes. It's the same thing every time. He can't have. Justin's gonna lose.
Just tell me what's in a normal taco for you.
Normal taco.
I don't even know if there is a normal taco. It's such a varied
Tell me
thing.
a crazy taco then. Let's hear a crazy taco.
Well, no, not crazy, but here's one I like lately, which is chicken and pineapple fried with jerk seasoning in a Caribbean style with like salady bits. What do you call it? Cabbage and whatnot, and some garlic aioli. So good. Caribbean chicken tacos. Very nice.
Yeah. Hey Ziggy.
Yeah,
I love you.
Tyler makes some very weird tacos.
But I am not a purist. I like crunchy shell, old El Paso taco with beef and seasoning and cheese. The classic Australian, very non-authentic taco. Yes, I love it. It's good. It's just good stuff. And I love the the more actual traditional style, and I love the fusion. And it is definitely a favored food of mine in general, is that style of eating. Yes.
So good. Oh, that feels good.
Doesn't really justify. Tyler's is like mayo, cucumber, pickles. I don't even remember what else.
That's tons of stuff, but it's great. If it tastes good, it's in the taco.
Sounds like a kind of almost Japanesey style taco, maybe.
No, I don't know. I shove like tons of hot sauce and mayo in there too and stuff. Okay. I'm allergic to wheat and cow dairy, so anything but cheese goes in there. Actually, goat cheese I can have, but it's all good.
Nice.
I was going to ask, before I was victorious in the taco question. I was going to ask, after YouTube, any ideas? What you're going to do?
Yes. The classic question of what will you do if YouTube disappears?
I don't know. I mean,
maybe not necessarily if it disappears, but like what else? Or is there?
Well, I think my skill set is adaptable to whatever comes next. So that for me has always been my like plan/not plan, which is to build an audience and a skill set, and then it doesn't matter what the platform is. So yes, if YouTube were to disappear, then I would make content in whatever way that people wanted to consume the content.
But the content creation thing is sort of like,
I want to keep making content, even probably like into retirement. I'll just my retirement would be, I don't have a specific amount of content I need to make to earn a living because, we're settled. So I'll just make whatever interests me at the time, which is not that different to how I work now, but there'll be a bit less pressure on it.
Sure.
So I'll just freely, like free-spiritedly follow whatever thing grabs my interest. So even if, only a small portion of my viewers are interested, hey guys, I'm super into Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead right now. It has no graphics. It's an old school roguelike. It's like, Ziggy, we can't watch this. I don't care. Here, have some content.
That's awesome.
10 guys will love it.
Yeah, that's right.
That'll be great. How did you get to be the official Q&A-er? For GGG?
Yes. How did I do that? Well, I put myself out there. I flew myself to New Zealand. We said, hey guys, we're coming to New Zealand. Can we come to the offices? And they're like, well, I don't know. We've never done anything like that before. We're a bit nervous. What if you leak stuff? Okay, we'll get you to sign an NDA and you can come around and make some content, I guess, and we'll see how it goes. And so I did that, and then I made content, and I didn't leak a bunch of shit. And they're like, okay, we kind of trust you now. Like, maybe we can do that. I was like, okay, well, I did it again. I put myself out there, and then I was professional in doing it. I started pretty early in content creation where I got thrown in with a bunch of journalists all of the time. So I got a bit more, because people didn't really know what to do with us new media people. They don't really even call it new media anymore, but that's what it was at the time. I was like the one new media boy, a young little thing with a bunch of grizzled old dejected, depressed journalists going from event to event. But I got to see kind of how to interact with like game publishers and devs and how like that stuff in media works. So I got kind of an on the job training for how to like be professional with that style of things and how to actually conduct interviews and things like that, which is a skill you have to build. It needs a lot of practice. Of course. Commentating, making a video, doing an interview, all of these things are very different. Being good at one doesn't necessarily translate to the other. You need to practice them all.
Especially because they're so like when you're doing those, you're not only doing your own questions, but you're trying to moderate and manage a chat that can sometimes be going crazy with trying to get there. So I don't know how you do it. I haven't had the chance to watch too many of them because they tend to have them on like Thursday or Friday our time at 1 p.m. So I'm like, quickly eat a bite and then I got to run. But yeah, I imagine that's got to be nuts.
Yeah, we have people behind the scenes now that pull the questions out, thankfully. So I don't have to do that, which is, I used to probably do that stuff more manually myself, but we get people to pull the questions out, so that helps with that side of things, and I don't have to worry about the moderation. I can focus on the Q&A. But I do constantly take the temperature of the chat and figure out kind of if people are getting a bit frustrated with a certain thing not being answered or wanting me to circle back to something. So I'll be able to do that. And I really like that. I like that feedback. Even if it is a bit frustrating at times when it's like, stop doing the interviews so that we can read patch notes. It's like, guys, come on. I'm not gonna end the Q&A early just so I can read you patch notes. You'll have all the rest of the day to do that. But I get it though. I get people being frustrated about that. I was asking recently whether we can like just set a time for the patch notes to come out and then we'll just do our Q&A and they'll come out.
Is there concern that people would leave the Q&A or that they just can't?
That's kind of the concern. But my
argument.
My argument for that was that, well, hopefully I've wrapped up by that time anyway. And if not, we can just, go 10 minutes over and it's not a big deal.
Honestly, the longer the Q&A goes, the longer the queue is, or the better the queue is spread out to access the website, and the website's not going to go down. Everybody trying to access it at once. It'll be spaced out over the next half hour.
That's right.
But yeah, so I do get like, occasionally people be like, well, why are you doing the Q&A? And ultimately it's when you do something, imagine you being the company here and being super nervous that something's going to go wrong.
They trust you. There's a huge part of it.
Yeah. Like I've done it a bunch of times. They trust me. They know I can do it well. I think I do a good job of it.
We do too.
Thank you. And, I can still throw out like the tough questions and stuff, but I can do it in a way that isn't,
you're not aggressive. You're
just
not
insulting them or being aggressive or, being a shitter, being a terminally online kind of. I can do it somewhat professionally ultimately, which
is what those things are though too. Like those are not aggressive in your face about like whatever certain things. Like they're promoting a new league that's about to come out. So it needs to be promote-y. Like that's good.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think it's important to throw in a few tough questions, like a few things that are hot button issues or a few things that have like really held back the previous league or whatever. I think it's super important to do that. And when if they answer those well, and they generally do pretty good job of that, then it only makes people's enthusiasm for the good stuff all the much better. So it's better to ask those. And it's their responsibility. It's GGG's responsibility to answer those questions well. So which they do pretty good. They do a pretty good job.
Another thing, and I hope, sometimes companies switch things up. I hope they keep using you as an interviewer, because one thing that I like is their comfort with you and the general community, but they have, it seems like a company mandate almost to just go out and answer questions honestly, as long as you're allowed to say said content. And I like that, but a lot of the times they say it, not a lot of the times, but sometimes the community will twist something that they say or focus on the wrong part or forget that it's just how they said something. It's not exactly the way they said it, you know what I mean? And so the fan base will freak out about something, but we have such a very reactionary community. I'm sure every gaming community is. And so I never want the community's sometimes aggressiveness to discourage GGG's honesty when answers are being given. You know what I mean? The honesty that they give is so great for super fans like us. And I think that the trust that they have in you and the chemistry that you guys have, no matter which individual is on representing GGG, I think it's a really good combination. So I really hope you guys stick with it for a long time.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoy it. I love podcasting and I love doing interviews and Q&As and things like that. And I mean, I do it as, just to be clear, I volunteer for that, running the Q&A. I don't get paid for it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I guess that never even crossed my mind, but...
Yeah, like they covered my flights to New Zealand recently to do that and do the... to make some Path of Exile 2 content. But yeah, I've never like been paid for the Q&As or anything like that. So you could argue that I get paid because I upload them to my YouTube and you know, $100 in ad revenue.
Yeah, but if it's not you, it's someone else, right?
But yeah, I do it because I really enjoy it, you know. I get paid in exposure, but I enjoy getting paid in that exposure. It's good fun.
Yeah, I'm glad it's actually fun. How many people on your team?
On my team?
Yeah.
What team?
You said we a few times. Yeah.
People yeah. When I say we, it's because I do everything with my partner Amy typically.
Gotcha.
So like we went around to New Zealand and everything.
That's awesome.
Also involving Tully. She went too.
Oh, fun.
What league was it, or what time frame was it when you shoved yourself at GGG that first time?
I don't even remember at this point. It was a very long time ago now. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can look, but find my.
Were they doing the live things at that point? Or the live? What do they call them? The live events or whatever?
No, it was way before
that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, way before that. I'm looking interview. We'll see if I can sort by date.
Sweet.
For my earliest.
One quick sec. Can you answer in a quick sec?
Sure.
Justin, you'll never guess.
You gotta use the washroom, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll be right back. And I washed my hands.
Good job. I can't find my earliest. There's one from 2017 here with me standing in the offices with Chris Wilson. That might have been one of the earlier times I went around there. So that would be
the last time he was seen.
2017. That would be like, in my mind, that's not that long ago. But then I'm like, oh god, that's actually like 7 years ago now. Okay, so I guess crazy. That probably checks out. Something like 7 or 8 years ago might have been the first time I kind of physically went to New Zealand and did something like that. And yeah, I see an interview with Chris there.
Good for you.
That's awesome.
So just kind of did that. I think another thing is, I think there's a lot of people in the community who could do this sort of thing, like run a Q&A and stuff like this, and do it pretty well. There's people that are professional enough, and certainly people that are more knowledgeable about the game than I. But that I don't think is necessarily the important thing. In addition, obviously, to me being a proven thing, so they don't have to take a risk on me, is that I am able to be a nice bridge between the everyman Path of Exile player, the average Path of Exile player, and the experience, like the long-term veterans and the people who are really good at the game. Like I can kind of tread all of those different aspects of the community. So I can ask questions, and I come up with these questions. My job is to, with the Q&A as far as I see it, is to anticipate all of the questions the Path of Exile community might want to ask, as well as sneak a few of my own in, of course. But I feel like I can cover the questions from all of those different parts of the community where they make sense in that Q&A context.
Sure.
And I think I can do that well. Whereas someone who's maybe super hyper knowledgeable about the game might get too focused on, that specific aspect that they're interested in, or that their community is interested in.
I think that's actually a really fair thing too, that you are pretty good in that bridge of the people who, because you also communicate a lot with the people. It's
all a very nice way of saying I'm not very good at the game.
No, you are though, but you also know, you communicate with all those people.
I just been around a long time, so I know a lot about the game, but I'm not very good at it. So it's a perfect balance. Yeah. I'm just trash enough as to be relatable, and that's
I've seen your videos though, because I can understand them, and I appreciate that.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
I just want people to have more fun with Path of Exile, man.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. One mechanic or item that's been removed that you wished was not removed.
Oh, jeez. Removed, but not removed.
An item or mechanic that's been removed from the game, but that you wish was back, that you loved, but they've taken it away.
Would it be wrong for me to say betrayal right now? That's the thing that's comes to mind first right now. It's I miss betrayal being a thing that had like content and existed. Like it's been happening more and more over time. Betrayal just becomes less and less relevant. And yeah, I don't love collecting like the things done Veil every time, but I would love Betrayal to get a rework and to become significant again. Yes,
that's fair.
Cool. When you play each league before you take off, do you take off because you are bored of the genre/game, or like you played, what was it, Affliction for 2 months?
Yeah.
Do you have are your goals different per character, or are you all about challenges, or what is it that kind of drives you each league?
I don't know that it's ever a consistent thing. I notice that I get a lot more engaged and play a lot more if I have specific goals, or if I have like a thing that I'm really focusing on. So this time I've been focusing a lot more on like learning and figuring and helping people understand the settlers mechanics, how shipments work and things like that. And
which thank you very much for.
Yeah, we talked about
everybody in the community has.
My community's done a great job doing science on that. We're trying to figure out Dust, by the way, but oh man, it makes no sense. My data is nonsense. So we're trying to figure that one out.
Just add 7.
It's a bit of a mess.
Just add 7.
But yeah, it's something. Sometimes it's like another game comes up that I'm interested in, and very rarely is it that I'm like sick of the game, honestly. But that probably happened with Necropolis, and it wasn't so much being sick of Path of Exile in general as being like fatigued by the game. I feel like that's actually the most common kind of, if it's a negative that drives me away from playing more, it's fatigue with Path of Exile. I never like hate the game or I'm sick of it, but I become exhausted by it. So that's just a part of it being a really deep game in a sense, but also it can be a part of the friction of the game being too much. And that was peaked for me in Necropolis, where like I really wanted to like the crafting, I really wanted to engage in it, but I had to trade 40 times to do a craft, and most of those people didn't respond. And it was a pain in the ass. And I had to physically move all those things around. And I added a ton of scarabs and I had to move around. And I had to trade for those scarabs if I wanted to do any like farming like strategies. And it was all just a bit too much. In addition to like the baseline fatigue the game builds over time, which is just like shifting fragments over to your stash tab and all that stuff. These little things all add up over time. And that's why I'm always like excited about them just smoothing out any of those little things. Because individually, you know, kind of clicking things over or one little particular thing is not a big deal, but added all together, those are the things that build up over a few weeks that make me stop playing eventually. And maybe sooner than I want to, which was the case with Necropolis. So I love that currency exchange. I love that like transfer, you know, multiple stacks over. I wish I could just do it for everything in my inventory in one click and lock in my scrolls or whatever, you know, lock those in place or put them in a little baggie, some sort of little fanny pack, and then transfer everything in one click. That would be a huge deal for me. Oh my God.
Yep. Sweet. Well, we're going to let you go because you got to go hang out with the family. It's your weekend.
Yeah. Thanks for the chat.
No, thanks for joining us. It was super fun.
No, we have one more. We have one more thing.
Go. Yeah. Oh,
do you have
important.
a Path of Exile? It is extremely important. Do you have a Path of Exile tattoo?
No, I don't have any tattoos. Kind of always wanted one, but too scared to get a tattoo.
So
it'll hurt. I'll cry.
All right. So let's say one day you're going to get a Path of Exile
painless
tattoo. Yes, a painless one,
so
a permanent, but
painless tattoo technology. Yeah, I'd probably go for it then. That's honestly the main.
What would it be though?
What would it be? I guess that's the other barrier. Is like actually deciding on what.
Yeah, give me everything.
Yes. I'd probably maybe just pick a piece of simple representative art, maybe something a little bit abstracted from the game. So I don't know what that would be, but something that's like representative of it, but not like directly like, you know, I don't know, maybe not directly like a chaos orb, but something that is kind of representative in a similar way. That would be probably what I would do. Something that like looks good to someone who has no idea what it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're like deep into the Path of Exile, like, hey, is that maybe like, you know, imagine, for example, some sort of like abstracted version of the silhouette of Katava's face or something, you know, it's kind of like that X shape of Katava is kind of often abstracted in the game.
Yep.
Whether it's like a thing that appears on the ground or a piece of art or you know, a thing somewhere, his worshippers or whatever. that sort of thing is like cool, I think, as a tattoo. Kind of abstracted concept piece.
Sweet. So once Painless comes out,
yeah,
that's
do it. Don't spray on cyberpunk tattoo thing.
That's right. All right, sweet. Well, thanks again for joining us. It was really a ton of fun, and hopefully enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Let's wrap this up. Forever Exiled 250 something 4. I'm Justin AK Tags.
Tyler, Wrecker of Days.
We'll have Ziggy's information down below. If your Patreon will catch you in After Dark, everybody will see you next week, 255. Look for more information down below. Website foreverexiled.com or Twitter foreverexiled82. We have a very fun Discord. Pop in there and say hi. And Patreon's other way to support the podcast are down below.